I gain something or the other from every podcast.
Because of Arjun, as he is the first inspiration of my life, because of B.R. Chopra's Mahabharat. Seeing his mentality, I realized that you can do whatever you want in life, like Ronaldo, like Virat Kohli, like Arjun. But then I think that I did not have that maturity in my mind that I could understand the actual meaning of Bhagavad Gita. Now, as an adult, when I think about this story, I feel that Arjun was an ultimate human mind if he was really like what we are told in history. He was an ultimate human mind who felt he was the ultimate warrior. But at Kurukshetra, Krishna Bhagwan showed them how small they really were. And in front of them, how great is the greatness of God, how great is the greatness of the scriptures, etc. So, human capabilities also have limits. And if you want to surpass those capabilities, first you need focus like Arjun, and after that, you need spiritual interest in life. From the same perspective, I would actually like to ask you about Lord Krishna. Who was Lord Krishna? This is a very simple question, but can also be a very complicated question. I'm asking this from a very human perspective. Suppose you and I bought a time machine right now, and before we get to around 3100 BC, let's get to around 3200 BC. If we see Lord Krishna in the form of Bal Krishna, what do you think he would be like? Or adult Krishna, if you met him who was a king after killing Kans, how was he as a person? Who was he? Was he a king? Was he a Rajrushi? Was he a sage? It is said that he knew that he was an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. But unfortunately, some people believe that he is a grey character. And then there are yoga schools like ISKCON. There are philosophies like ISKCON where Krishna is also considered Parabrahm, the form of God, the ultimate. So I have an understanding of this topic, but I would like to deepen that understanding. Ami Ganatra, tell me.
Wow. On Krishna, what should I say? If you can say something about Krishna, if you get the opportunity to say it, that is a very big thing. I don't know how much justice I will be able to do. I will try.
I am asking you this because now if we think about Hindu Samaj, think about Hindu Dharma, then you cannot even imagine Hindu religion without Lord Krishna. But it is said that he was also born in the same phase, around 3200 BC, which is actually quite recent. There was no mention of Lord Krishna before his arrival. Maybe in Hinduism, he did not exist at all. So our country has been worshipping him for only 5000 years. This is also a strange thought for me, but tell me.
So, about Krishna. First of all, I will add one more thing about Arjun, which you said. You said that you take a lot of inspiration from Arjun. And very rightly said, firstly, there should be that focus skill. And secondly, spiritual interest. I will add one more thing to it. When the war was about to begin, both Arjun and Duryodhan, yes? Lord Krishna, then it was Krishna. Now we say God, but we go to Sri Krishna only to ask for his help. Due to war, when they go to ask for help, everybody goes for alliance like they do today. Ukraine, it will come to India or it will go to China. Russia will go to some other people. So, like that, Kauravas and Pandavas were also visiting other kings to ask for alliance. When both of them go to Sri Krishna, just because Arjun was younger, first of all, Krishna sees him, then he says, look, both of you have come to me, so I will have to support both of you. So, you tell me, what do you want? There are two options. I am on one side, armless. I will not fight the war. I will not take part in the war and neither pick up any weapon. I will not take up arms. And on the other side is my Narayani Sena. Ek Akshohini Sena. Okay, my army is very big. So you have to choose what you want from it. Now any normal person would be tempted. Think Ek Akshohini Sena is a huge thing. But now Duryodhan thinks, oh my God, what will Arjun ask for now? So Arjun says that I have full faith in my abilities and my strength. I don't want your army. I only want you. Because I know that glory follows you, fame follows you. and I too want all that. I too should get fame and reputation from him. He was saying, that is why you should come with me. Well, now that one decision changed the course of the outcome, right? Because if someone else would have been there and a warrior like Arjun would have broken down on such a battlefield, so motivating him was not a small thing. And his problem was that my family members want to kill me is not a trivial problem. That was a real problem. So many people died in the Dharma Kshetra, right? Even the Pandavs' own children died. So whatever problem they have with Arjun is justified. But what is Arjun's approach that even on the battlefield, he first chose the right mentor? He had the understanding. I must have a good mentor for understanding. And if there is anything else, I must get proper guidance. That is the first thing. Secondly, when he's on the battlefield and he's completely confused and disoriented and doesn't know what to do, so he says, Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. I am your disciple. I surrender to you. Tvam prapannam, I surrender to you. Please tell me what is the right path. A warrior like Arjun, who was undefeated, just think how big our ego becomes if we achieve even a little. To say that I completely surrender to you and those two were of the same age. Still to say that I trust you because your intelligence is better than mine. Your thinking is better than mine. Because you are better than me, I surrender to you. I am your disciple. You guide me. Humility and sense of surrender is required when you have to do something in life. If ego comes in, then it is over. This is another quality of Arjun. Arjun talks with Sri Krishna. Who is Sri Krishna? Actually, they are of the same age and they are cousins. Okay. And in the story, well, it's interesting. In the main Mahabharat story, Krishna's entry happens in the Swayamvar of Draupadi. He has already grown up. The story of his childhood, his child form, is mentioned a little in the Harivansh Puran, which is considered an annexure to Mahabharata, also mentioned in Bhagavad Puran, as to what was his childhood form like. So if we look at Krishna, since he was born, when he was in Mathura, from Mathura he was taken to Gokul. In Gokul he grew up in the house of Nandaji and Yashodaji. But even there, death was following him many times because Kans thinks that my nephew will kill me. So he has to find out who my nephew is. He goes beyond all this. Then when he was 11 years old, he came to Mathura to kill Kans, and then Kans was killed. Well, he was never a king. Okay, he was never the king, yet people respected him. Well, why was he not the king? Because in the Yadav Kul, I think their name was Ugrasen or Sursen, one of them, he was already a king, who was also his grandfather, Kansa's father. Krishna's mother, Devaki, her father was already a king, whom Kans had put in prison at that time, so he remained their king always. When he goes to Dwarka, the king remains the same. Still, he was younger than them, and he had Balram also as elder brother. So, if he wanted to become a king, he would have become one. That is why he was never a king. But if you call him a kingmaker, he must have been one. But not kingmaker in the sense that he made the king for Yadvas. He was someone whose intellect, whose intelligence was also trusted by his society as well. Well, now, his intelligence also, we say one thing, that is Vishnumati. And that Vishnumati for me characterizes Krishna. What is Vishnumati? These days we talk a lot about leadership. We call that situational leadership. Okay.
Here I would like to mention that you are a graduate from IIM Ahmedabad. Okay. Now tell me.
So what is situational leadership? That we expect that a leader, you talk about gray, right or wrong, meaning there is no clarity about what should be done. Should it be this way or that way? This is gray. But what is the need of the situation? In some circumstances, it is necessary to act like this. Why is it necessary? Sustainability of the system for religion. In some situation, you have to behave in some other way. Why? For the sustainability of your system. What is the eventual goal? In Gita, Krishna says, why was he born? Yada yada hi dharmasya. Whenever there is a decline in dharma, What does it mean when dharma goes down? Remember sustenance. When such a situation arises or such circumstances are created that Matsya Nyaya occurs in the society. Matsya Nyaya means big fish eat the smaller fish. Only because you are a bully, only because you have, means, you can say anything to anyone, you have the power to rule. Do anything you want. Truth doesn't matter. Satya doesn't matter. Non-violence doesn't either. Nothing else matters. Because you have the power. You keep oppressing people. This way the society will break down. So we have to establish dharma and establish justice. So they say that dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. They say that for the establishment of religion, an incarnation is born for the establishment of dharma. Therefore, whatever work you do, whatever decision you take, it should be aligned to religion. Dharma should be for sustenance, irrespective of the system. It's not easy to understand what sustenance truly is because in a situation sometimes both the things seem right. This is a dilemma. Both the things are equally important. So which one would you choose? When we talk about Krishna and his Vishnumati, it is that intellect which is very clear. He is called Yogeshwar Krishna, the one who has Yogast Buddhi. What does Yogast Buddhi mean? We say that Samatvam Yog Uchyate, that happiness and sorrow do not matter. It is a very objective intellect that whatever decision you take it not because of emotions or attachment or because you like it, but because it is necessary. That vision is within you. The vision that this is a good decision for your society. That state in which he is, it will be called as Yogast state. For ordinary human beings coming into that situation, that state of intelligence, which is complete objectivity. Strong sense of intuition is not easy. People try, but it still doesn't happen. It takes multiple lives. Krishna had Yogastha Buddhi. His intuition was very strong. So strong that he knew what to do in any situation. Well, now let's take an example of that. And when the war took place and he had killed Kans, and then he went to live in Mathura. So Kansa's wives were actually Zarasand's, the king of Magad's daughters or sisters or something like that. So he killed his own son-in-law. And he continuously, by the way, Magad was a very powerful territory as compared to Mathura.
Where is modern day Magad located?
Bihar. It will be that area. So they keep repeatedly attacking Mathura over and over again on Mathura. So every time Krishna, Yadav and Krishna, who were from there, they used to defeat them every time. But see, if you are in a situation of war all the time, then will your society progress? No, right? You will be a war-struck society. You are in war mode all the time. You will never be able to make progress. You need peace for that. And Krishna realized that as long as he stayed there, and since Zarasan had the biggest enmity with Krishna, he had killed Kans. So he realized that as long as he is there, this will continue and he will constantly be in a war-struck situation, although they had not allowed Zarasan to defeat them. So what did he do? He said, okay, I will leave from here and I will go somewhere else and establish my city with my Yadav people. So there were many Yadav and they went with them and settled Dwarka on the Gujarat side. So if seen from one perspective, it is said that he ran away from Mathura to Dwarka. That is why he is called Ranchod Rai, the one who left the battle. And people say that he ran away to escape the war. Okay, now, as a Kshatriya, he tells Arjun on the battlefield that if you run away and Arjun is not like this, then how will I take care of my family? I have to go. I will not be able to fight. Na yodse Govindam. He says that, oh Govind, na yodse, I will not be able to fight. Then he tells him one thing while convincing him that if you run away like this, then what will people say? You will be defamed. The same Krishna in that situation suddenly left and he went away. Now, in a way, yes, people will say he ran away. But was it necessary for the sustenance of their society? His leaving from there at that time. By taking that decision, history will know me by the name Ranchod Rai. It did not matter to him. What mattered to him was dharma sansthapan, in the sense sustenance, which was right to do at that time. It was not possible for him to defeat Jarasandh at that time.
And sustenance comes from actual progress. That means the focus is actually on progress.
How to take the society forward? Well, how can justice be established in society, in our society, right? And if you have a war-struck society, resources will keep on decreasing. There will be a lot of anger, sadness, and death. And then how will society progress in such a situation? How will we progress, right? Spiritually, mentally, resource-wise, wealth-wise, which way? There will be a downfall. Such a society will be destroyed. It is better not to stay. It is better to get out of there. So those who remained in Mathura got peace in their lives because Jarasandha's enmity was with Krishna. And he went to Dwarka, he settled there. This understanding of what is right and what is wrong, context specific, is in Krishna. That is why he is called Yogastha. And this is the same thing because he had the wisdom to bring in complete objectivity. The Pandav used to consult him. It is not that only Arjun used to do it. When Indraprasth has been established and Yudhishthir is going to perform Rajasuya Yagna, what happens in Rajasuya Yagna is that all the kings of India should accept that you are a Chakravarti. Only then will they be ready to pay you tax and you will give them protection. But if any king is against you and does not want this, then he will not be able to perform Rajasuya Yagna. He won't become Chakravarti. When he decides he wants to perform the Rajasuya Yagna, then everyone said, no, you are powerful. Your brother is so powerful. You will defeat everyone. He says, all this is fine, but I need an unbiased opinion. And for that, he goes to Krishna. And Krishna says that I agree that you have the power and the capability to become a Chakravarti and to perform Rajasuya Yagna. But this is not easy because Jarasandh of Magadha will definitely oppose you. Plus, he is so powerful and has been around for so long that if he comes against you, then all the other kings who are his allies will also join forces with him. Okay? And he has captured many kings. He has also kept them captive. So everyone is scared. As long as he is alive, you will not be able to perform Rajasuya Yagna. Second, it is very difficult to defeat him in war because of these allies and all that he has and his powerful army.
Did this happen after the Mahabharat war?
No. This happens earlier. This happens after they get married. When the Lakshagraha incident happens with the Pandavas and Draupadi, Duryodhan and these people try to burn them in the Lakshagraha. Then they go into hiding. They marry Draupadi. They come back. So when they come back, it is decided to divide Hastinapur because Yudhishthir has a claim and Duryodhan also has a claim. Better to divide it so that both of you can get it. So the Indraprasth in that division was earlier called Khandavprasth, which was a barren land. It was given to Yudhishthir. But the Pandav, with their hard work, made it like Indraprasth, very beautiful and prosperous.
Which is probably modern day Delhi.
Correct. That is what it is. So Meerut, where I had said that Bibi Lalji had done excavations, that is the Hastinapur.
Okay.
The Hastinapur of that time and Delhi was above that, and that used to be one. Then it got divided, and today's present day Delhi is the Indraprasth.
And the actual war that happened might have happened for the whole India or just for the northern belt or NCR, UP.
No, it happened to everyone. So the question is, who participated in the war? In my book, Mahabharata Unraveled, I have included a complete map of where the participation took place. You will see people from east, west, north, south have participated, one way or the other. That is why this war became the Mahabharata of India. The fight was between only two people within a family. Everyone participated. Why? Because somehow that Chakravartin was also a king. He was powerful. So everyone thought that you should side with him. So, in the south, the Pandya kings were there, Dravidians were there, Kaling were also there. Okay. All of them are there. They all participated in the war. Similarly, the above issues concern the state of Kashmir. Prag Jyotish is from northeast. Many people say it is in Assam, but it's in the north. The king there,
Bhagdatta, Nepal.
Nepal Kirat. Nepal used to be called Kirat Desh. We come from there. Okay? So from all over India, I have pinpointed on the map from where the kings came.
Was there any part of India that did not participate?
Yes, so within those there were some which did not participate at all. Okay, there were states which did not participate. The most prominent was Vidarbha. And Vidarbha is in,
Maharashtra.
yes, part of Maharashtra. But from Vidarbha comes Rukmani, who is Krishna's wife. Her brother was Rukmi. So Rukmi went to both of them and Rukmi is like, hey, I am here. You guys don't worry. I will defeat them. That is why Duryodhan says, no, I don't want you. And anyways, Krishna and he were on this side. So he also said, no, I don't want you, right? So he was out. So there were some who did not participate. And I have also marked those which were neutral at that time.
Wow.
So, whole India was involved. That's the beauty of it. Many times people say that Mahabharata is only of the north. South has nothing to do with it. But no, not just in the war. The marriage relations that happened were also across states. For example, Duryodhan's wife is from Kalinga. Kalinga is present-day Odisha. Okay. Chitrangda, the wife of Arjuna, with whom he had a son named Babruvahan. They call it Manipur. So today we know Manipur to be in the northeast. Its description in the Mahabharata is below Kalinga. And if you see present day, it's Vishakhapatnam area.
Wow.
So such marriages have also taken place. Okay, it is from across India. Mahabharata basically encompasses everyone and everything.
Do you believe that Sanskrit or Prakrit was spoken everywhere? Because in Tamil Nadu, it is believed that Tamil was spoken even then.
As I understand, this is not during Mahabharata. It is about after that as well. You can consider Shankaracharya. Okay, the 4 peeth that Shankaracharya established were everywhere. In east, west, north, south. And he went everywhere and all his writing was in Sanskrit. He comes from Kerala where Malayalam is spoken today. So, can you imagine? How could he have conversed with so many people? So, Sanskrit was always the link language which has been there in Bharat. I am sure their regular language would be Prakrit and the language of their own each state. In fact, when the Lakshagraha incident is about to happen, Vidar comes to know about something about Duryodhan. Because Duryodhan has said that, hey, you send the Pandav to Varnavat, there is going to be a fair there, etc. So Vidar gets an idea about this. But how can he say it now? If he was not able to speak in front of everyone, and when he came to know, then it was time for him to leave. So it is said that he said something in Mlech language to Yudhishthir that you should be careful. Something like that. Mlech Bhasha. Mlech language. They are the people who are not Sanatani. So all the rest, or all these states of Bharatvarsh, there was an understanding that they were internal. And Mlech were external. Now which one has been included in Mlech, Yavan, the present day Greece, etc. And it is also mentioned that their language was different.
Meaning white people.
White? I don't know if they were white at that time.
Okay.
Right? But the Greeks basically, they are more Mediterranean.
Why are you saying that? You mean they probably weren't Caucasian or not white?
Caucasian, exactly. Like Mediterranean are not necessarily the white. There are so many races in that too. So I don't know how exactly they looked. They look a little desi. Okay. But if it comes from the Mlech language, then it means there must have been multiple languages. No doubt. But Sanskrit was definitely a link language which everybody understood. In fact, it is also mentioned in Ramayana that when Hanumanji and Ramji meet for the first time. So, Sri Ram says, his speech is exactly like a person who has read the Ved. His speech is like that. The Vedas were in Sanskrit. So, whatever Hanumanji was saying, he must be saying it in Sanskrit. That is fine. But after that, when Hanumanji goes to Lanka and sees Sita ji in Ashok Vatika, then he is thinking, in which language should I talk? If I speak in a language like Sanskrit, then she will wonder who I am. But if I do not speak in Sanskrit, she will not trust me. So which language should I speak in? He is thinking that. That means there were multiple languages. But Sanskrit was definitely a link language which seems like everyone in India understood.
And in the end, I think Hanumanji sang a song, How to Sita Ma, in the voice of Udit Narayan. Sorry, this is a joke from the animated Ramayana.
He sang a song. He sang it in Sanskrit.
Oh, okay. Have you seen the animated Ramayana?
I haven't seen the animated one, but they show it in. He sang about Ramji. That was about how his life was in the forest.
Ramadut Hanuman.
That song.
Not that song exactly, but yes, somewhere on those lines.
But we were talking about Krishna Bhagwan.
Yes.
Amiji, this conversation has gone from Krishna Bhagwan to white people. But this is the fun in Ramayana and Mahabharat podcast.
It goes everywhere.
Okay.
So, anyways, basically to sum up the Krishna thing, Vishnumati, Yogastha Buddhi, and that is what I see in him. And because it doesn't come naturally for a normal human being to be that kind of person, which came naturally to Sri Krishna. That is why he is considered an avatar, and in Mahabharat, divinity was seen in him even at that time. And in the Gita, Krishna tells everything in the Gita. So in Vibhuti Yoga chapter, he asks, because Krishna asks, where should I see you?
Arjun.
Oh, sorry, correct. Arjun asks, how do I meditate on you? Where can I see you? In which form of yours should I meditate on you? Because then he has been telling Arjun that, don't worry, just focus on me. Come to me. I am God. I will save you. You just do your work. Don't think about losing or winning. That's why they show in Vibhuti Yoga that whatever things exist, the one that is the best among them all, that is me. They say that I am Ram among them, of the ones who are armed with weapons. Why is it so? Why am I Ram in Shastradhari? Because Ram is the finest warrior of all times. Yeah. So they say that among the Shastradhari, the best was Ram. That which is calculated, or the time, among all the measurements. Who am I? I am Kal. I am time. There are measurements like length and breadth, but what is the best of all? It is time. So I am time, the flame from which light comes. I am the sun. In all of that, I am Aditya. And he says that among the Pandav, I am Arjun. So he says, wherever you see excellence, wherever you see Shri, wherever you see radiance, wherever you see Utkrisht, there you see me. I mean, you see the divine element, Dev Tattva. And that was Krishna. That excellence was in Krishna. He was above everybody else. And when it came to understanding Dharma and the Yogast Buddhi part, and that according to me is Krishna, the Yogeshwar, Krishna, the Charam Sima, the pinnacle of excellence, the pinnacle of yoga.
Since
this is an episode of TRS English, of course, we have to talk about the occult, and we are going to talk about psychics. In Sufism, it is believed that there are some 36,000 filters between you and God.
Oh.
And the more you make spiritual progress, which comes through prayer, which comes through meditation, which comes through doing good deeds.
the more you make spiritual progress, the more the filters begin to disappear from your mind. And what the common people see around us, it is not actually the reality. It is a game of illusion. And the real things are not visible around us. The presence of God is not visible around us. And perhaps in the same way, the presence of ghosts is also not visible.
So, I am not asking about ghosts.
But I am asking about intuition. I am talking about abilities. According to you, are psychic abilities also a factor here? If yes, then were these psychic abilities also used in Mahabharat or not? Do you have any opinion about psychic abilities?
Again, I will refer back to scriptures only. If we look at Patanjali Yoga Sutra, then its third chapter is Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhutipad, sorry. In that, it is said that as you progress in yoga, what siddhis will you be able to achieve? We call Hanumanji as having Asht Siddhi. Actually, Hanumanji was a yogi. What is said in Asht Siddhi is that you can achieve this by expanding your body. Make your body as small as possible. Absolutely light. You can levitate. Become absolutely heavy. No one can even move your feet. Or else, what is the person in front of you thinking mentally? Find out that intuition. That is also deep intuition, right? Or you, yourself. Our mental capacity is so strong that I can manipulate what you are thinking. There is a movie in which he manipulates dreams.
Inception.
It is said that Siddhi is achieved through yoga because a normal manush or a normal human being does not use even 1/6 of his mental capacity or capability. We use less than 1/5 or even 1/6 of our mental capacity. So if we start using more and increase that mental capacity, what will be its impact? That is what is psychic, right?
Or yogast?
Or yogast. It means unbiased. And when you reach that stage, basically those unknown, unused chambers of your brain, of your intellect, they start opening up.
So perhaps Krishna Bhagwan's chambers were opened 100% and perhaps that of Arjun it was 80%.
I won't say 80%. Arjun is a human being like us.
Who is very focused and motivated.
For sure, it will be more than us. It will be more than us. His approach and attitude was such that he gave space to his buddhi or his intellect to flourish. For Krishna Bhagwan, I won't say 100%, but yes, he did that state of Ritambra, Pragna, intuition. He did all that.
Maybe 100% means moksha. You have connected with God.
That is why it is said that you cannot explain moksha in words.
There is no difference between you and Paramatma.
And perhaps this could be the purpose of human life.
Moksha.
Then what do you think happened to the souls of those warriors after their birth? Like Arjun, Bhim, Yudhishthir, Nakul, Sahadev.
What happened to them?
So what happened to their souls, right? The souls of the Pandav? There is a story, a tale of Mahabharat, which I will share with you, okay? So, when these Pandav are in exile, Markandeya Rishi comes there. And Markandeya Rishi is said to be immortal. He is thought to be like Chiranjeevi. So they ask Markandeya Rishi what his age is, how old he is, and so on. They ask him if there is someone older than him, etc. This is how the conversation starts. And then Markandeya tells about King Indradhanush. So King Indradhanush was a very good king. And then he died and went to heaven. He stayed in heaven for a long time. And as I was saying, heaven is also a state. A state where, as long as you have accumulated karma, you will stay. Now, once you have enjoyed the opulence there and it all gets balanced out with your karma, then you will have to take birth again. So what happened is, his sins were destroyed, his karma was destroyed. And then Yamraj told him that, now you can go and you will be reborn. And then he is in denial, like, no, he is not ready to take birth again or be reborn yet. So he says that, no, I am not there yet. My karmas have not been exhausted. So Yamraj says to him, no, if you think that, then you will have to prove it. And how can you prove? If there is even one creature on earth who remembers your deeds, your good deeds, it would mean that your glory, your reputation is still on earth. Your fame is still on earth. In this case, you can stay in heaven. Okay, so your accumulated karma has not ended. So now there is proof. Indradhanu has to prove that people on earth still know him. So he first comes to Markandeya because he is, immortal. And he says, do you remember? Do you remember who I am? I am King Indradhanush. So Markandeya says that, no, we are sages. I am always occupied with something. So I don't know you, but there is someone older than me who might know you. So some Ulluk or owl was living in the Himalaya. So he says, that owl is older than me. So you should go and ask him. And he goes to that owl or to that Ulluk. But the owl says, no, I don't know you. But there is a crane or a heron who is at XYZ place. Maybe he knows you because he is older than me. So Indradhanush goes to him. Even the heron doesn't know him. So then heron sends him to a tortoise. This keeps happening and he sends him to a tortoise saying that the tortoise, that Kurma, is older than me. He might recognize you. So he goes to Kurma, to the tortoise. And then he asks the tortoise if he remembers someone called King Indradhanush. So that tortoise becomes very emotional. He says that, yes, I still remember very well that he had performed so many yagyas. He was such a good, pious king, etc. I remember him very well. So, because his fame still lives on, and there's somebody who still remembers King Indradhanush on earth, Yam says that, yes, okay, your fame is still there, so you can still stay in heaven. So, if we talk about Pandav, we know that their souls are in heaven, okay? But their fame is still there. We still talk about them. So I feel like they are still in heaven.